I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Sergeant Puma, Cat Crab Lobster, and Duck Machine. Thank you very much for the support. It is much appreciated. Story number 1. Here There Be Monsters, written by Geistling. Dreeden grabbed his sister near his hand, yanking her sharply down the tunnel. Without turning to her, he hissed, "We have to keep running, Nero. There are monsters coming. I can hear it." Nero clutched his hand with all of her might her child body could muster, and sniffled as she replied, "I'm so tired, Dree, and hungry. We haven't had anything to eat in so long." "I know, Nero, I know. I'm tired and hungry too. But the monsters are going to catch up to us if we stop and rest. You know what Mesmo and Pazzi said. If we see a monster, we have to run. It's the only way to survive," Dreeden said. The two children moved in silence, still sprinting through the low, narrow tunnels that ran through his family's crippled ship, the Neza. They could hear the monsters behind them, crawling down the tunnels, its cybernetic armor scraping on the narrow tunnels, bellowing, screeching. Dreeden didn't know how much longer they could keep going. Things on the Neza had gone from bad to worse, to apocalyptic. First, their dark drive had broken down just as they got into the Diomedes asteroid cluster. This had made mining impossible, but their parents had been sure that they could fix the dark drive. The two children were asleep when the dark drive melted down, its containment field failing and causing a massive eruption that tore through the ship. Then Mesmo, Gobi, had made it back to them in a cloud of acrid smoke, smelling of burning insulation and melting metal. She had stayed just long enough to force them into the aft section of the ship, where she sealed them in. She had signed that she loved them through the viewport before the Atmo rushed out of the ruptured ship, carrying their last partner into the empty. Dree had managed to activate the distress beacons just like his Pazzi had shown him, but he knew that it was likely pointless. The Diomedes weren't close to any interstellar shipping lanes, and the Alliance didn't help shipwrecks unless they had some kind of value. More importantly, the monsters controlled the Diomedes. While he didn't know the details, Dree knew that there was a war being waged between the Galactic Alliance and these monsters, and that the Alliance was losing. The monsters were winning against all odds, killing Alliance soldiers by the thousands. Dree's family had hoped just to avoid the conflict, both the Alliance and the monsters. Dree's father had said the Alliance were just as bad as the monsters, if not worse. They just wanted to live in peace, and mining was what they did best, especially the anaworms used in the pathway. Then, this morning, the monster had found them. They boarded the crippled ship while Dreeden had taken Nera and ran. They'd been running for hours, the monsters behind them so massive that they filled the service tunnels from side to side, even crawling. The monsters roared and bellowed ceaselessly behind them. As they came around one of the corners ahead, Dree saw one of the monsters at the far end of the tunnel. The thing had massive armor plates seemingly screwed into its body, and its head was covered in a dark steel helmet. The face was pure blackness, with a grinning skull staring right back at him. The immense thing was terrifying. When it spied Dreeden and Nera, it roared at them and tried to rush down the tunnel at them. The tight quarters slowed it down, allowing the children to dart down an intersection just ahead. The monster roared behind them, its frenzied howls almost seeming like words. Dreeden led his sister down the tunnel after tunnel, but the monsters seemed to be everywhere. Dree finally realized that they were being herded, and he knew where. The shuttle bay was the only place large enough for the monsters to gather, to use their mammoth strength and size. Wait, Nera. I need to think. The monsters are trying to trick us," said Dreeden, pulling his sister to a halt in the dark tunnels. "I'm scared, Dree," whimpered Nera. Dree handed her the last protein bar, knowing the need for rationing had ended. "Yes, Caesar, eat this while we rest." As the young girl devoured the bar, Dreeden stared around the dark, empty tunnel. Try as he might, he couldn't think of any way to escape. The ship was too damaged to allow much room to maneuver, and the monsters had them cornered. Finally, Dree rose to his feet. "We have to keep going, Nira. We can't give up. Bazi said we always stick together, and we always keep going. Just remember, I love you." The little girl rose to her feet and grasped Dree's hand. "I'm so scared, Dree. How are we going to get away?" Dree smiled down to his little sister and said, "Of course, Caesar. We just have to stay together." Clutching his sister's hand, Dree did the only thing that he knew to do. He guided her directly to the shuttle bay. If this was the ends, he meant to make it quick, at least. No more running, Dreeden thought. As they drew close to the bay, the children could hear the monsters. Their oversized footfalls made their floor grates tremble, shake. The monstrous bellows and roars echoed down the tunnels. The lights grew brighter and brighter, finally blossoming into blinding glare as the children stumbled into the shuttle bay. As Nira clung to him, Dreeden defiantly drew himself to his full height. "I am not afraid of you monsters. Do your worst," he shouted, raising his tiny multi-tool his posse had given him on his naming day. Dreeden and Nira screamed in unison as a figure barreled into them, knocking them off their feet. As their eyes adjusted to the harsh light of the bay, the children stared in astonishment at their mother. Her helmet was off, exposed to the soft golden fur that covered her rodent-like features. Dreeden didn't think that he'd ever see anything more beautiful than the 4 warm brown eyes of his mother staring down at him. "How, Mesmer?" stammered Dreeden over his sister's squeals. "I was sucked out with the Atmo, but my suit wasn't damaged. I floated near the ship, conserving oxygen as best I could. They found me, and when I told them my children were in sight, they sent in soldiers. They've been looking for you for this whole time, but you kept running," his Mesmer replied. Dreeden looked around the room in astonishment at the immense armored forms surrounding him. He could see now that their black synth-steel armor wasn't bolted to their flesh. It was bolted to a heavy exoskeleton that supported what looked more like tools than weapons. He could see drills, cutting wheels, torches, many things that he couldn't even guess. "The monsters were trying to help us. They weren't chasing us. They were screaming. They were roaring at us," Dreeden said incredulously. His mother smiled down at him and replied, "Their voices are much deeper than ours, and ours are much higher than theirs. They can't even hear our voices without a translator. They weren't roaring at you to frighten you. They were just trying to get you to come to them." One of the huge soldiers stepped forward and removed their helmet in a hiss of gas. The face was smooth, with the only fur being on top of the head. The sides were shaved to the skin, and the top long tangle. The soldier dropped to one knee. Even kneeling, the soldier towered over the tiny Quarrens. She pressed a button implanted under her smooth, furless skin on her throat and said, "You should be proud, Gobi. We haven't ever had to chase someone this hard just to rescue them." Her voice rumbled, but underneath it, Dreeden could understand her. "Why, though? Why would you rescue us?" asked Dreeden. "The universe is at war, youngling, but I'm part of the Terran Deep Space Search and Rescue Squads. Humans might seem like monsters to you, but we save who we can, when we can. I'm just glad we found you guys in time," the human replied. "Will you be selling us then?" whimpered Nira. The huge soldier reached out and gently touched the tiny Quarren child's head, brushing her golden fur. "Humans don't believe in slavery, or whatever the Galactic Alliance calls it these days. Your mother has agreed to relocate to one of our mining facilities. The pay is good, and we have a small colony of Quarrens on site. Your kind skills are prized in the deep mines." Dreeden spoke into the silence. "When can we go?" End of story. Story number 2. The Vastest Object Ever Launched, written by Harry Hero. Earth rotated peacefully, unaware of the approaching danger. Approaching the galaxy was a titanic feat of engineering. A colossal warship meant to tear apart civilizations and leave them as husks, ripe for the later harvesting of valuable resources. Earth never saw it coming. Either, to be fair, did the warriors, as their ship was hit by a sudden impact that shredded their engines and life support in one go, leaving the crew drifting inside a metal tomb. It was several centuries later that the humans discovered the floating wreck, upon finding that the projectile responsible was a manhole cover. The only reaction was, "Oh, that's where it ended up." End of chapter. And that, my friends, concludes this video.